It's time for No Pad Sports Talk. Stay tuned as two brothers bring you the latest from your Michigan teams and beyond in hockey, baseball, football, and more. Let's get started. Here are your hosts, JD and Steve.
Welcome to another edition of No Pad Sports Talk. I am one of your hosts, JD.
And I'm Steve, and I'm going to let my brother know that I did not hear the intro until the very end there. So
that's weird.
Hopefully it's playing. It did play, obviously. I could hear his head bopping around. Yeah, I could hear it. I could see it, I should say.
Well, either or. All right. We'll check it when it comes in. Hopefully everything is fine, because I heard it fine. But at any rate, so obviously football's over as far as the NFL. We got some other football coming up, and we'll do specific shows regarding XFL, USFL, etc.
And the draft.
And the draft, especially the NFL draft coming up.
Yep. Combine's in April. Or no, Combine's in... When is the Combine? Combine's before the draft, so that's got to be March, right? It's got to be coming up soon.
Yeah. And but today it's going to be all about baseball and spring training, specifically looking ahead at the Tigers.
Okay. Yeah, our hometown Tigers. As of last year, at the beginning of the season when we did one of these shows just like this, I picked them to go 500, and you kind of looked at me funny because you thought that was a stretch.
I think you picked them to go above 500, though. I think.
Did I? All right. Yeah. Well, we can go back and check the records. We'll get.
Yeah.
But I'm almost sure I said it. At 500, and why they didn't quite make it to 500. They were close.
You were definitely closer than I was in my prediction, but I think you were predicting to win like 84 or 85 games when
that could 500
have would be 81. So
yeah,
but at either way, you're still closer. That's not in question. But this year, I'd say when you're looking ahead and look at the season, I think it's way different than last year.
Yes.
Last year I was obviously down on the Tigers. I was not very happy with the player personnel. I wasn't happy with how the current personnel was actually performing. And a lot of that, I just thought was the whole GM coaching and the way they approached young players and as far as their development goes, which is to say, I don't think they really prioritize young player development at all. And so even though we had some players that were talented, they never really seemed to come into their own. And I think that was the biggest problem that we've had in the past number of years. But obviously, I think now that's completely changed.
Yeah.
And I think it shows when you're talking about I think it was Baseball America ranked the Tigers farm system as the third best in Major League Baseball.
Yep.
So, and again, it's not just because of the players, but it's also the way that the players are being developed.
And you were absolutely down on them. I mean, to say I guess that's the nice way of saying it, right? But you backed up your reason. It wasn't just because I'm down on the Tigers because they're just going to suck because they've sucked for so many years now, right? That wasn't the case. Your biggest complaint, I think, about the whole Tiger system was its farm system, was its development of young players, and its ability to bring them along in a manner that they were going to be successful, right? Because we just either didn't have the personnel at those lower levels to help do that, or we didn't have the players to do that, and that changed, right? We saw that even like when we saw the draft mid-season, right? Some of the things that they did, some of the moves that they've made since the offseason. So,
and a lot of it's just they have a plan in place, and I've said this before. I compare it a lot to the Matt Millen era for the Lions, and specifically there was one instance. We talked about this before in a previous podcast, and I'm going to do the same thing. I forget the player's name, but it was a running back that was drafted in the 3rd round out of Wisconsin for the Lions. And when it got to their draft pick, the Lions didn't know who they were going to draft. And
Right.
and this was coming from like firsthand accounts. It's not like hearsay or anything. I guess it is kind of hearsay technically, but it's not like I heard someone say this or whatever. Like they were actually present, saying that it was kind of chaotic. They didn't know who they were going to draft. They didn't have any sort of plan. And someone in the background just said, "Hey, draft this guy," and that's who they drafted. Like there wasn't. I mean, and I kind of felt like that's what the Tigers were doing. They didn't really have an identity. They didn't know like what they wanted to do or what they wanted to be, and their draft was all over the place. And now I believe that they do have an identity. Players that can control the strike zone, not strike out, and play
Right.
pretty decent defense. Like that's what the Tigers are trying to accomplish. And it's nice that we see them making moves with that identity in mind.
Absolutely.
From the draft, free agency, etc.
And even I, who's more of a novice when it comes to baseball player personnel, like I've heard the term, 5-tool player. Like there are parts and pieces that I kind of have an understanding of, but even I've noticed the difference in the people that they were bringing in. Right, it wasn't about power hitting; it was I got to get you on base. Right. And I think I referenced the movie Moneyball, right? And how the Oakland Athletics were trying to replace people like a big name person with like 3 lower name people to produce the exact same numbers, right? So while it's not quite, I'm not comparing the Tigers to that, but that's how my brain processes. I'm trying to tie it to something that I've seen to kind of help understand what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of what I've noticed is that they just want you to get on base. If I can hit you around, right? That's the more pitches you make the opposing pitcher pitch, the deeper they have to go into their bullpen, right? And if they got to go deep into their bullpen, that I would assume it's going to benefit the Tigers if the other team is going deep into their bullpen, right?
Correct. And it really ultimately it depends, like how fast you get the guy out of there. Because what we've seen over it's commonplace. It's not anything that's nobody doesn't know. But pitchers aren't really going 8-9 innings a game anymore. Like they're trying to pitch 6, and that's it. Like they're trying to get them 6 innings and then get the bullpen. But yeah, if you can get the pitcher out, in the 4th inning or something along those lines, yeah, that's huge. But anytime like 6th inning or later, that's kind of what their plan would be anyways. And I don't think it really helps the Tigers that much. But anytime you put the ball in play, you're giving your team a chance, to score, because that even if it's a ground ball at shortstop, they got to make a play. They got to field it cleanly. Yeah. They got to throw it cleanly. The guy at the other end has to catch it cleanly. He's got to keep his foot on the base. Like all that stuff has to come into play. And we've seen, this is again my non-scientific observation. It just seems like defense hasn't really been what it used to be back in the day. And so, you make a guy field, you got a chance of getting on base with an error or something else. But
and we're all human. Humans make errors, right? And if you got a guy, a pitcher out there that's not doing a whole lot, and you get a shortstop that's not quite on his game, right? Because he's been sitting out there a little cold, hasn't warmed up right, or cooled down, makes a bad throw, short hops it, first baseman can't get it. But like you said, putting the ball in play puts those other 7 people in the field, in the game, and the opportunity increases to me to make an error because now you've got more people involved.
And this is going to transition to what I wanted this episode to be about today. Mm-hmm. Because I have 5 questions that I'm looking to spring training to have to get answers for. Because, of course, we don't know anything right now. We have to see spring training going into the start of the year to see the answers to these 5 questions. All right. And the reason why I'm bringing this up now, as far as because exactly what you said, you got to put the ball in play and make that other team defend it. And one of the players on the current roster that's going to start doesn't fit the Tigers mold, and that's Javi Baez, right? Like
Correct.
we know he doesn't fit the Tigers mold. He's a free swinger, takes big cuts, and he doesn't really control the strike zone well, and he doesn't put the ball in play often because he strikes out so many times. Like
Correct.
he does not fit the mold the Tigers want. But that was the last big move that the previous regime made that this current regime has absolutely no control over. They got kind of stuck with this.
And
now,
they're just eating that cash.
Correct. Now, so this is my very first question. To me, this is the biggest question of the Tigers because Javi Baez is making so much money. He's got to play. So what happens with him, right? Like you need him to produce. Otherwise, you're going to have this huge hole in your order. So, so my number one biggest question for the Tigers going into this year is, can Javi Baez hit? Now, at the end of last year, he was talking about working on his swing, trying to make changes, become a better hitter, better plate discipline. And, you can look back. I don't buy it even back then. Like, I just don't think that someone at his age would be able to make enough adjustments to his swing. Not that he's super old or anything, but when you've been doing something for so long, it's hard to adjust and make those changes. But,
it's not really about age. It's about how long he's been doing it and muscle memory, right? He probably hasn't had to make a lot of change from high school. So, up
because
to this point.
As far as like talent goes, he's always been one of the most talented people. But at some point, like your talent only takes you so far, right? Like you need good mechanics, and his mechanics are not good. And so now, look, I'm hoping I'm wrong, but I've said back then at the end of last year, I don't think anything's been changed. But everything coming out right now that I've heard is that he's worked really hard on his swing over the off season, and on top of that, he showed up to spring training a week early than everyone else, just again to get more work in and trying to fix his swing. And I saw little clips. We're talking a couple swings of Javi Baez out of spring training so far, and the swing does look different. Now, does that translate into base hits with better plate discipline and a live game? I have no idea. All right. And again, it's not like they were high def quality, clips that I was looking at. They were, but from what I could see, his swing looks shorter, and that's only going to help him if indeed that, what I'm seeing is right. Because like I said, it was kind of grainy. It wasn't great footage, but it looked like his swing was shorter. So kudos to him, right? I hope that does work. I hope that that is the case, and I hope that it does lead to better base hits. I would sacrifice some of Baez's power to reduce his strikeouts 100%.
Absolutely. Yeah. The game is changing, right? And I think the way the game is changing, you're seeing a lot more athletes out in baseball, and not where they're multi-position players or they were multi-sport athletes coming out of college or high school or whatever. So they have the ability to do a lot of different things, and I don't know that power is necessarily king anymore.
Yeah, it's power is one of those things that can change a game with one swing of the bat. Like we've seen so many times. Just think about it this way, right? Bottom of the ninth, down by 3, grand slam to win it, right? That's every kid's dream, when they go out to play Little League, right? And that's one swing of the bat, clears all the bases, you win the game. Power is, really, I don't want to say never be replaced, because you can't really replace power necessarily, but I think what we're going to start seeing, and I think what we have started seeing, is those guys, and I'm not talking about, let me rephrase that. I can't put into words what I'm thinking, and I'm struggling with that right now, but say a guy that hits 200, but 30 home runs.
Right.
Now he might hit better against lefties. His average might go up to say 250 against lefties, along those lines, right? Like those players would be more of a platoon player. Okay, we're going against a lefty. You're going to be in the lineup, and so they're not going to be like an everyday player. They're going to be matchup type players. But what I think the game is going to a lot more is, look, if you could be a 300 hitter with 50 home runs, let's look at like Judge, Ohtani, etc. Hey, more power to you. That's awesome. You can be an everyday player, obviously, but if you're just that player that is 230 home runs and you can only hit lefties, that's all you're going to play against.
Right.
But I think people are starting to look at average and on base percentage a lot more than what they used to, say, like in the 90s and in the 2000s, because we're starting to see people like Quan from Cleveland, left field, starting to play. The guy has it's 2 home runs a year, but he's going to get on base and play good defense, and we're starting to see those type of players starting to make an impact on teams. So I still think that's where for the most part they're going to go, and that's where the Tigers have shifted. And I'm glad to see at least they're sticking to their plan. So my second. What?
Hold on. So just to kind of wrap that up. So it was about Javi Baez. My question: you said that they have to play him because they're paying him. Do they?
Yes. Well, technically, no. But even in football, because that's your sport, that if someone's making like $17 million a year, that team's going to give them every opportunity to play because they don't want that money being wasted.
I don't mind giving them every opportunity to play, but if you're not my best option, yes, like the team has to understand that they're in a bad contract and they're not. There's no way to get out of that. Right.
Well, unfortunately, in this scenario, we don't really have another defensive shortstop because as bad as Baez is at the plate, he is still pretty decent in the field. And he's not. Again, I don't think he was what he used to be, but. He still is a good defensive shortstop. And if we were to put in, and I think this team's going to value defense still, right? Anyway, I still think no matter what, he's going to be a starting shortstop unless another player comes from the minor leagues that is able to play good, solid defense.
Okay. No, I just wanted to make sure, I just feel like you don't have to play somebody if they're not your best option.
Yeah, you're right, technically, but again, no owner likes to waste that money.
They don't. Okay, number two.
Number two. Second question, and it's about Torkelson. Will he be able to continue the success he had in the second half of last season? Because for a year and a half now, his first year and a half, he was probably one of the worst first basemen in the Major League Baseball. And he really started to hit a stride in the second half of last year. So will he continue? Because frankly, with Miguel Cabrera out, even though he was as old as what he was still one of the more productive hitters. Maybe not with power, but at least hitting the ball.
Yeah.
You're going to need someone to kind of pick up that slack. And Torkelson is kind of the guy that I think everybody is kind of eyeing to be that guy. Someone that can hit the ball and someone that has some pop in his bat. Hit 30-plus home runs a year and hopefully be around 270 for the batting average. I think that's what people would want. So will he be able to continue that success?
Yeah, well, I definitely know that baseball card owners would like to see that.
I got a few of Torkelson, but
just I wasn't calling you out specifically.
I know, but I am one of those owners.
You are one of those owners.
But and look, I think that Torkelson has succeeded everywhere he's been, and I think that he will continue the success. Now, again, only time will tell, but I am a Torkelson believer, and I was even telling you during the year last year when he was still struggling in the beginning part of the year that all of his metrics, like his secondary metrics, are all good. Like as far as barrel rate and exit velocity and all that kind of stuff.
Correct.
Like they were all good. It's just that he was getting some extremely unlucky bounces or whatever you want to call it. And it just wasn't succeeding.
Didn't go his way.
I do believe he will.
Yeah. So, okay. And you did talk a lot about him. He's a guy that you're kind of high on anyway.
Yes, for sure.
Right. And it would be nice, I look at, you're not going to replace a Miguel Cabrera, right? But again, if you got a guy, if he hits between 250 and 270 with your 30 home runs and does okay on defense, yeah, that's going to be a great season. And the thing is, building on last year, success breeds success, right? That's usually kind of the hope, right? That confidence continues to grow. You keep doing the things that you're doing, trying to, be a student of the game so you can continue to grow and get better.
And I think he will. Again, there's no reason for me to believe that he won't. Sometimes players just take longer to transition in Major League Baseball than others, and I think he's just that guy. But I think going forward, he's still a young guy at that. But I think going forward, he's going to be I still think he's going to become that monster at the plate that we all expect him to be when he was drafted first overall by the Tigers.
Okay.
Number 3. Will Casey Mize come back, be healthy, and go back to his form? Coming off of Tommy John surgery, not pitching at all in 2023. He hasn't really pitched, obviously since 2022. And he started, again, kind of like Torkelson, he started to kind of find a groove before he actually injured himself and had to have the Tommy John surgery. And so will he come back and, go back to the form he was pre-injury, and have that, 3.5 or less ERA, will he be that guy?
Yeah.
And I think that, yes, again, I'm a Casey Mize believer. I think that, Tommy John surgery is not like what it used to be. Obviously, we know that, from so many people coming back from Tommy John surgeries.
20 years ago, you had to have Tommy John's. You were done. You never pitched again.
Yeah, well, you definitely weren't the same. I mean, people like, Frank Tanana had to go from a flamethrower to a junk thrower because he just couldn't top 90 miles an hour. But you're right, though. Like, it was almost a career-ending injury.
Correct.
And but I think Casey Mize will be able to come back. I know he's already been doing some simulated game stuff, pitching from both the windup and the stretch and going through, trying to pitch 6-7 innings, etc. And I think that the Tigers are in pretty good shape because they have quite a few people that can be a starter this year, and they can run a 6-man rotation and limit the amount of innings each starter is going to be able to put on their arm. And I think that's what they're going to do.
Okay.
We'll see, but I think that's what they're going to do.
I was actually going to mention that because I wanted to throw like a 3A in there. Was like, how many pitchers do you think the Tigers are going to have in their starting rotation? Right.
Yeah, I think it's going to be 6.
You kind of you mentioned it, so you kind of threw that in there already.
So number 4, I'm going to stick with the pitching. All right.
Okay.
And it's about Tarik Skubal. Will he be able to take the next step and become an ace? He's done so good already, and
battled through injury last year.
He definitely did. Came back after that. But will he be able to actually take the next step? That's the big question for me, because right now the Tigers don't have an ace, and they need one badly. And can Skubal be that guy?
So, when you say ace, what kind of numbers are you talking about? Or what are you looking for as far as an ace?
I was going to say,
as a pitcher?
Forget about the numbers necessarily.
Okay.
I'm if you're in a playoff scenario, say game 1 of the World Series, and you want to come away with the win, and you're going against, I know Garrett Cole is a Yankee, and it wouldn't work for the World Series situation, but you're going against say a player like Garrett Cole, right? Yep. So you're going to need a shutdown pitcher of your own, someone that's going to shut down a powerful offense and keep you in the game for a chance to win later in the innings once their starter gets knocked out.
Okay.
Can Skubal be that guy to keep you in the game?
Pitch for pitch, inning for inning, with the battling their number one with your number one. That's what you're looking for.
Yes.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yes. I mean, look, every year you kind of expect players to come back and be a little bit better than they were the previous year. You really do expect that. But some players, they plateau. They just don't take that next step. So if Skubal is able to take the next step, that's going to be huge for the Lions Lions. Jesus,
Lions.
We talk too much about the Lions.
We have.
It's going to be so huge for the Tigers, and I think that again he can. This and I have to really credit the staff for the Tigers being able to develop pitching, and because Skubal was not a high draft pick, right? So being able to and again, it's his work ethic too. It's not just all about the pitching staff. I don't want to take anything away from him and what he's done, but the pitching staff definitely, deserve some credit for being able to develop not just him but other pitchers and help them become better.
Yep.
And I think Skubal having another year with this pitching staff, but this pitching coaching staff, that yes, he can take another step forward.
Yeah. And you've talked highly about the Tigers' development of pitchers. Which is good. Like it's one of those things where we haven't had to spend big money on free agent pitchers to come in because we've been able to use what we have to be effective. And that's really correct. What it comes down to be is about can you be effective with what you've got? And
number 5. All right. Number 5 is kind of a cop-out a little bit in a way because there was like you can look at it as a multi-parter, like lots of multi-parts. But ultimately, I just want to see how the young rookies will perform in the Major League Baseball because look, the Tigers, they're going to have to depend on some young players, coming up through the system. Namely Colt Keith. He's already on the roster. He's going to be starting somewhere out there, but more than likely, Jace Young, he's going to be on the roster at some point this season. Meadows is going to be on the roster. Like I even look at Parker Meadows to be on the roster from day one. I think both Colt Keith and Meadows will be. I think Jace Young will join at some point. But then you got Justice Bigby and Henry Malloy, right? Like what about those guys too? That's going to more than likely be on the roster at some point during the season. Maybe to fill in for injuries, maybe to come up to try to spice things up somehow, right? Like you never know. But if the Tigers are going to make any waves and win this division, you're going to need good production from those guys, and we have to be able to see them play well. Because if they're going to be like a Spencer Torkelson, where they struggle for a year and a half before they become, what they should be, that's obviously going to hurt the Tigers' ability to win the Central. So,
which is a winnable division.
It is. We can talk about that at a later time as far as their teams, and but it definitely is winnable. But it's going to depend a lot on these young guys.
Yes. And kind of like the Lions did.
That's correct.
Right? Yeah. So, the
there's
Tigers
parallels between the two teams.
There is, and the Tigers are gonna. They've got a young team, right? The Tigers
new
do.
GM, new coach, new philosophy.
Correct.
Both teams had that. Lions had a new GM, new coach, new philosophy. Tigers had a new GM, new coach, new philosophy. It's you see that, and again, the parallels are kind of uncanny. And I got one bonus one here. All right. And it has nothing to do with the Tiger season this year, but it has to do more with a certain player that's in their farm system by the name of Max Clark.
Max Clark. Okay.
So going into the draft last year, I said, don't be surprised if the Tigers surprise everyone and draft Max Clark. I kind of seen that coming again based on once I knew they had a certain formula they're following, right? I was like, Max Clark kind of fits that formula.
Yep.
But here's the thing. He's forever, as far as Tigers fans go, he'll forever be compared to Wyatt Langford, because a lot of fans out there wanted Wyatt Langford, and last year during the season after the draft, Wyatt Langford absolutely tore it up in the minor leagues, and it's very possible. Let me rephrase that. He's going to be on the Texas Rangers at some point this year, and it's very possible he's going to make the team right out of spring training. So now he's also like 3 years older than Max Clark, so you really can't compare them. It's not an apples comparison right now, but how is Max Clark going to develop? What's his development going to look like? Is he going to be able to destroy minor league pitching? Because he's going to be a good fielder. Is he going to be able to destroy minor league pitching and kind of move up in the ranks and get to Double-A? Right. I think that's going to be his goal, is to get to Double-A at this point in time. I mean, not to kind of go off track, but we kind of do anyways. We've seen a bunch of players recently make their major league debut at age 20.
Yes.
Now, again, that's incredible. It doesn't normally happen.
Right.
And those players are, phenomenal.
Impact. Yeah. Well, they were impact players.
Can Max Clark be that guy? I mean, even if he is, he's not going to be on the Tigers this year because he's not even going to be 20 years old. But, is he going to be able to at least make steps to make his debut at 20, possibly 21? That's what I want to see.
Okay. So, all right. When it comes to Max Clark, I think you're right. It's going to be hard to compare him to Wyatt Langford because of the age difference, right?
At this point in his career, yes.
At this point in his career. So it's going to have to be one of those things where once they both in the major, like up in the bigs, and I think where they've settled in and they've got a couple of years, like you're going to have to compare, year ones, right? You're not going to be able to compare first Wyatt Langford's year to a major league year for Max Clark, I think, because there's still going to be that difference, right? So, but it's going to have to be, you can still look at numbers based on where they're at what level they were at, right? So we'll see. I think Max Clark's going to be great for baseball. I think he could be that guy that comes up when he hits 21 or just before he's 21, right? But it's definitely, this is kind of that year where it's going to make that determination, right? If he makes it Double-A, right? He's going to be pressing for Triple-A next year, right? And with a possibility that he could be called up late in the season. Maybe it's a season we're not going to make the playoffs. Let's see what we got from the kids, right? Kind of thing.
Absolutely, yeah.
And then by year 3, he's looking to make a roster spot right out of spring training.
Again, hoping so. But again, I'm just saying that because of the comparison between Langford and Clark, and I'm a believer in Max Clark. I've said it before. I really like the way he swings. And he is one to actually change his swing recently. It's last year in high school before he came out in the majors, and I think it's going to play. Again, he's not. I don't think he's going to be the power guy that Langford is, but I think he has higher upside in terms of everything else. I think he can be an overall better contact hitter. I think he can be a doubles, triples machine, and I think he can play a better defense. I think the ceiling for Max Clark right now is higher than Langford. It's just a matter of achieving it.
But you put 3 more years of body growth on him, right? And even if his numbers for power don't show up, like the bat speed's going to be there, right? Like exit velocity, like those types of things are going to increase as his body changes over the next 3 years as it matures into an adult, because he's
100%.
He's a teenager, And that's what they're
Absolutely.
to everyone out there. If you didn't, he's a teenager, right out of high school.
Right out of high school.
Right.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
The guy's going to grow into his frame. He's going to put on 10, 15 pounds. Right. Going to see that difference, and he's going to have to learn how to use that weight and adjust that different, right? Because as his body changes, he's going to have to continue to grow and change with his body.
I mean, he is, 6'1" right now at 205, right? Right now. But yeah, you're right. It's definitely going to change.
He does not look like 205, by the way.
No, he does not.
He does not look like 205.
But that is that's what he's
I'd like 185 is what he looked like.
Now, and just to kind of shore up the whole Max Clark thing, and when he was in rookie ball, he hit 283 with a 411 on base percentage. All right, that's cool. Whatever. It's rookie ball, but
first time with a wood bat.
Right. I mean, and he played, he only played 23 games in the minors at all. He did get put up to A ball, and A ball he definitely struggled. Okay, he only hit 154 with a 353 on base percentage. What is nice though is that on base percentage, because even in A ball when he was struggling with the average, he still walked a ton, which is unheard of, honestly. Right? I mean, to have almost 200 points higher on your on base percentage than your batting average, the guy walked a ton, so he still got on base.
Right.
And I love seeing that. So at any rate, but and something else to think about too. Even at A ball, as far as the average age of a person in A ball, he was still 3 years younger than the average age in A ball. Again, we just got to keep that in perspective.
And we do. We do. But everybody else, keep it in perspective.
Right. Keep it in perspective. But what do you guys think out there? Like, what are your questions heading into the season? What did I miss? What should we be talking about? What do you want to see? Because I'll be interested in hearing that.
Yeah. 90 wins.
I would love to see 90 wins.
I'll take 85 in the division.
But look, stay tuned for our preview. We always do a preview of the season. It's going to come a little bit later because we still got to, look, we want to see how these players look during spring training. Yeah.
You can't, you're not stuff, we can talk about them during spring training, but we're not going to try and make predictions during spring training when you don't have a solid roster yet.
Right. It'd also be kind of cool. We might even break down a couple of players too. So if there's any players you want us to break down in terms of offense, defense, whatever it may be, again, put it down in the comments and we'll see about breaking down a player, whether it's their swing, base running, fielding, throwing, pitching, pitch arsenal, whatever it is, right? Put it down there. And love to see what you guys want to see, what you guys want to see us do.
Yep.
But with that, just stay tuned for next episode.
Absolutely. Appreciate everybody listening.
All right. Talk to everybody later.
Thanks for listening to No Pads Sports Talk. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. While you're at it, help spread the word by leaving a rating and review wherever you listen to podcasts. Follow us on social media at No Pads Sports Talk.